Hey everyone, before the story begins, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps keep these stories alive. The first snow of December was falling over Heidelberg, soft and quiet, the way it always did along the Neckar River. The old bridge glowed amber under the lamps, and the castle ruins watched from the hill like a tired witness. I stood at the kitchen window of our apartment, counting the minutes since Lena had left 3 years earlier, even though I pretended I didn't anymore. She had come back begging on a Thursday evening, of all times. Thursdays used to be pasta night, cheap wine, the radio low, normal life. The doorbell rang just as the church bells struck 7. When I opened the door and saw her, thinner, paler, wrapped in a coat that wasn't hers, something inside me settled. Not anger, not love, certainty. "Jonas," she said. My name like a bruise, she pressed again to see if it still hurt. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside and let her in. That was mistake number 1, or maybe the final move in a game she didn't know I'd been playing since the day she left. 3 years earlier, Lena had packed 1 suitcase and told me she was suffocating, that she needed more, that Marcus, my cousin Marcus, golden boy of the family, understood her in ways I never did. I still remembered my mother standing in the hallway, arms crossed, saying nothing as Lena walked out. Family loyalty ran in strange directions in ours. Marcus had always been the favored one. My father's brother's son, confident, reckless, praised for things I was expected to do quietly and without thanks. When we were boys, he broke my arm pushing me off a dock. Everyone laughed it off. Boys will be boys. I learned early who was allowed to take and who was expected to endure. When Lena left me for him, the family framed it as fate, chemistry. Nobody mentioned betrayal. Nobody mentioned that Marcus had been coming to our home, drinking our wine, listening to my worries about my failing architecture firm. I did what I'd always done. I endured. But endurance is not forgiveness. It's storage. After Lena left, I lost 10 kilos, slept on the couch, and listened to the pipes groan through the winter. Then, quietly, I started paying attention. I hired a forensic accountant under the pretense of a business consultation. Marcus owned 6 successful ventures. None of them added up. Cash movements between shell companies. Loans repaid with loans. A house in Baden-Baden bought through a trust that didn't exist on paper. My father had taught me one useful thing before he died. People who think they're untouchable leave fingerprints everywhere. Lena didn't know any of this when she stood in my kitchen that night, warming her hands around a mug of tea. She told me Marcus had changed, that he drank too much, that the money wasn't real, that he blamed her when things went wrong. "He's being investigated," she whispered. I think he used my name for something. Accounts. I didn't understand. I nodded, sympathetic. I had practiced that expression in the mirror. "I never stopped loving you," she said finally, eyes shining. "I made a mistake. Please. Just until I figure things out." I let her sleep in the guest room. That was important. A distance, but not rejection. Hope needs space to breathe. Over the next weeks, winter deepened. Lena cooked again, cleaned, laughed too loudly at my jokes. She talked about starting over, therapy, children maybe someday. I listened, filed everything away. Meanwhile, I made phone calls. The anonymous tip to the Finanzamt was thorough, polite, devastating. Documents, timelines, names. I didn't mention Lena, not yet. I didn't need to. The investigation widened on its own. Marcus called me one night, drunk and furious. Accused me of poisoning her against him. I told him I didn't know where she was. That was true in a way. She wasn't with me. She was with the version of me she thought still existed. The knock came in February. 2 officials. Calm voices. Marcus's house searched. Accounts frozen. The family WhatsApp group exploded with confusion and denial. My mother called me crying, asking if I knew anything. "I'm as shocked as you are," I said, and meant it in a very narrow sense. When Marcus was formally charged, Lena collapsed on the kitchen floor. She sobbed, apologizing, saying she hadn't known, that she'd only signed what he told her to sign. I held her while she shook. "I already knew everything," I told her softly. She looked up, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" I stood and retrieved the folder from my study. I placed it on the table between us. Copies, not originals. Dates, her signatures. Not criminal, but complicit enough to matter. You used my surname, I said, on an account in Luxembourg. That was careless. Her face drained of color. Jonas, please. I was scared. Marcus said. I know what Marcus said, I interrupted. He's always been very convincing. She reached for me. I stepped back. The next part wasn't loud. Revenge rarely is, when done properly. I told her the truth, that the lawyer I'd recommended to her weeks earlier worked for me, that her statement to the authorities had already been submitted, carefully framed, legally safe, but damning enough to sever her from Marcus completely. No prison, no fortune, no future together. What happens to me? She asked. That depends, I said, on how quickly you leave. She left the next morning, before dawn. The snow was melting, turning to gray slush along the streets. I watched from the window as she dragged her suitcase away, shoulders hunched, finely small. The family fallout was brutal. Marcus cut off contact. My aunt called me a traitor. My mother didn't speak to me for months, until the day she showed up at my door with soup and quiet eyes. You were always the stronger one, she said, almost apologetically. Spring came to Heidelberg, green and bright. Tourists returned. My firm landed a municipal contract. I walked the old bridge at sunset, lighter than I'd been in years. I didn't win her back. I didn't destroy her either. I simply removed myself from the story she thought she controlled. Some nights, I still think about Lena, about the life we almost had. Then I remember the silence after the door closed, the kind that finally feels honest. Revenge doesn't always end in fire. Sometimes it ends in clarity, and that is enough.